Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm sitting with Joe Drago in his living room. Thank you so much, Joe, for accepting our invitation and for taking the time to meet with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So we're going to start with the first question, and we're going to ask you to speak of yourself, your passion, your credo, your principles.
Well, I guess I can start from my birthplace. I was born in Creighton Mine, if you can believe that, because nobody even knows where Creighton Mine is at this time. And my father was a projectionist. He ran a movie theater there. My uncle was a barber, and we lived in a duplex with my uncle's family and our family. And we stayed in Creighton till I was in grade 8, I think it was, and then we moved to Sudbury because my dad got a job at the Capitol Theater in downtown Sudbury. And he was a projectionist for 41 years. So from there I started at St. Charles College, and I was in the first class at St. Charles College. It was an all-boys school with nothing but Basilian fathers for teachers. And when I got to the end of grade 12, our principal, Father Lococo was his name, called 3 or 4 of the boys in and said, "Are you fellas prepared to take grade 13 next year?" It's time we had grade 13. We all said, "Yes, Father." He said, "Well, I don't think you're smart enough to do grade 13. So he said, "I'm limiting you to one sport."
Oh boy.
So we were playing, I was on the hockey team, I was captain of the football team, and I loved both sports. So I went home really upset and told my mother. My mother said, You're not going to school to play sports, you're going to school to get an education, you have to go to St. Charles. I said, "Ma, I'm not going to St. Charles. I want to play the 2 sports, and at Sudbury High, I can play the 2 sports." So myself and 2 of the other guys that got the same message that I did, we all went to Sudbury High. And I'm proud to say we won the hockey championship and the football championship.
Well, congratulations.
Anyway, that was abandoning the Catholic education. And then from there, I got a hockey scholarship to New York. And I had a full ride for 4 years at Clarkson University, thanks to Bob Bradley, who was my high school coach and became the principal. Mac Jack, he was the first principal, but never did get to be the principal because he was promoted to superintendent. And he told me that he wanted me to stay in education for a while, and then I could change my mind later on. But to get a feel of education, because he said, you probably would enjoy working with youngsters. So I decided to do that. But jokingly, my wife was from North Bay, and she thought Sturgeon Falls and Chelmsford were really the backwoods. So we were engaged, and my plans were really not fixed in any way. Am I going to play hockey? Am I going to go to law school because I had a degree in business? Am I going to teach school? So Mr. Bradley, I called him Mr. Bradley till the day he died, even though he was my friend, my boss. And I did a eulogy at his funeral. We became very close. I decided I'll try a year of teaching. So I was teaching math and accounting. And I truly didn't enjoy classroom. So I said close to the end of the year, I went in to see him, and he said, what are your plans? I said, my plans are that I'm not going to be a teacher. And he said, why? I said, I really don't like the classroom, that every 35 minutes the bell rings and everybody runs out of the room and runs down the hall to the next room, and that's not my style. So he said, well, what do I have to do to keep you here? I said, get me out of the classroom. So he said, well, how would you like to be in guidance? I said, full-time? Yes. So he gave me a timetable, full-time, in the guidance department. And that's where I really felt so good doing that, and I decided I'd stay. I became the head of guidance right after that, and then I moved to LaSalle. I was the head of guidance at LaSalle for 1 year, and at that time Chelmsford High School was looking for a vice principal. And again, Mr. Bradley called me, said, I want you to apply for that job. Again, I said, I don't think I have enough experience. He said, I want you to apply for that job. My wife, when I came home for dinner, I said to her, I really feel uncomfortable about this. She said, if he told you this, apply. What have you got to lose? So I applied, and lo and behold, I got the job. So I started at Chelmsford. We were bilingual. We were on shift, morning and afternoon shift, French and English.
Yes.
And then the board decided they were going to build another school. One would be a French high school, one would be an English high school. So the big controversy was who's going to have the new building and who's going to have the old building.
Oh, wow.
And so George Menard was the principal, my principal of Chelmsford, and he wanted the new building. And I really was going to be the principal of the Chelmsford High School, but I really didn't care. I thought Chelmsford High School, the building was sensational. It was the old type of building, terrazzo floors, big shops, big classrooms, everything was perfect. So we agreed, you go to Rayside in Azilda and we'll stay in Chelmsford, and that's how it happened.
That's a really good history if you look back, and you lived that.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember as a student in those days how it was, the shifts, and Chelmsford and Rayside, and parents, the community involved, and there was a lot of dissension.
Absolutely.
Is a word I'm going to use.
Yeah. And it's sad because I felt that school was ideal. You had your choice. You could take any subject in French or any subject in English. It was your choice.
Yeah.
And the morale and the camaraderie of the kids and the staff was sensational. And I really thought they made a big mistake separating at the time. Well, I was very high on the morale and the way that school operated. And it was just really the beginning of so-called super boards. So that school was built by the Rayside-Balfour, I guess it wasn't even Rayside-Balfour at the time, it was just Balfour, I think it was. And then they joined with Azilda, and they became Rayside-Balfour, if I can remember correctly.
That's right, but I forgot about that, right? The school boards were local.
Yeah.
Very local at that time.
That was a wonderful thing, too, because they had their own funding, and we got treated so royally because it was their school, their town.
Proud of it.
Proud. And everybody was proud to be on the staff. So we were treated like kings. And if you needed something, you went to the principal. Your business office was right in the school. He was the business administrator for the board. Only had one high school, so he was right in one of the end offices in the building. So if you needed something, you walked down to his office and knocked at the door and go in and sit down and have a coffee and talk to him, and you usually came out with what you needed. So when the super board came in, you got all these highfalutin superintendents and this guy and that guy who wanted to let you know they're the boss and not you. So I didn't like that at all. I always felt a school has a complexion.
And part of the community.
That's right. And you have to have people that fit into that community. You just don't have somebody downtown on Drinkwater Street at the time in the school board office saying, this is your new math teacher. Well, I would like to interview those people ahead of time and say, oh yeah, she or he would be great on our staff, or that's not a person that would fit in Chelmsford. So, but you didn't have that. I can remember a lady coming to the office. I didn't even know she was coming. The human resources had hired her and told her to come out and meet me. And she came out, and the secretary at the school said, there's a lady here to see you. She came in, she said, I'm your new bookkeeping teacher. Well, I was floored. I said, is this the way we're going to operate in the future? But it got, to me, I got into education, I felt, at the right time, and I wanted to get out at the right time before I got bitter. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't fun. They were taking the fun out of things.
Yes, and that's so true.
My philosophy with whatever I did, school, playing hockey, coaching hockey, was you have to work hard, but you have to play hard. You have to have a sense that it's worthwhile to be with these people and you're accomplishing some real good things together. I always say there's no I in the word team. And it's important that this, and you know in the role you had, that the staff respects you. If there's a function at the school and you're
Yes.
picking up pop cases or you're doing this or doing that, not because you're the principal or the superintendent, but because you want to be on that team.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing that, because many of us don't remember those days. We didn't live them, or if we were students, we didn't see them.
Right on.
And so it's good not to forget the good old days, as you put it, and the way things were back then. And we know that a school needs to be part of the community. Through your sharing, we heard your passion, your principles. Thank you for that. Now, if I move on,
Go ahead.
and we say, we talk about lifelong learning. We know what led you, the path that led you to teaching through sharing your experiences. Now, are there any courses or training that you needed to do to change your position or change the area you were working in? So we're talking about lifelong learning is a must, and it doesn't need to be formal. It can be informal, and it can be through experiences. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the one thing that was a big plus for me was getting into the hockey world. I had a 4-year honors degree in business, but I learned more in hockey and in business because I was fortunate to make some good contacts, got into a couple of businesses because of contacts, and I learned what business is all about. And that was one thing I remember calling the guidance head in, and we had a long talk. I said, you know the big problem with guidance? And I'm guilty as you are. We went to university and now we're telling kids everything they should know about this, this, and this, and this, and they don't know anything because we never experienced any of that. So I think guidance should be hiring people who have some worldly experiences and can pass it on. It's like a priest talking about marriage and he's never been married. So, you know.
That's true.
So I thought, I'm very fortunate that people call you and say, I'm going to go into this little business. Would you like to put some money into it, or would you like to be a part of it? Because you have a connection. And I learned to use connections. They've been very good to me all the time. I don't hesitate. Now I'm doing a lot of charity work. I don't hesitate to go to a business or to go anywhere and say, I need some help with this organization or this project or this event. How about giving a little bit of cash? And you know, I always credit myself that I've never been shut out like a goaltender. I always get something. I don't always get what I think I want, but I always get something.
Yeah.
And that something very often turns out that there's going to be another something down the road because the person that helped you realizes that you're there for the right reason and you're not absconding funds and you're not doing this or doing that. You're doing it to help people, and they all come through. So it's been very rewarding that way.
For the better, for always making things better. So you spoke a little bit about your rewards doing this. Could you, maybe there's other rewards as well, and maybe everybody in a journey has struggles.
Yes.
So maybe a little bit about that?
Well, again, I will relate to something in hockey, I guess. I was asked to go to a Junior A Northern Ontario League meeting to give them some guidance because at the time I was a member of the OHF, Ontario Hockey Federation. So I attended a meeting, and the president was a doctor, a chiropractor. And he approached me after the meeting and said, why aren't you sitting on one of these committees. I said, well, I don't belong to anybody. I belong to a league that isn't sanctioned by the branch. And he said, well, you can run. I said, no, if you look at the Constitution, I'm not eligible to run for that. So he had the Constitution altered so that people like me could run for positions. So I ran for the junior council chair for the province, and I was elected. I spent 2 years doing that. The main reason I wanted to do that was Northern Ontario was always treated like a second-rate citizen. The South, oh, we don't want to go to the Sioux, that's so far. We don't want to go to Timmins, it's so far. And so we never hosted events, and we never got involved in things in decision-making. So I felt if I could get on that board, you can flap your tongue a bit and maybe get some action. So I ran for the OHF Board of Directors, and I became the second vice chair. The next year I was the first vice chair, and the next year I spent 7 years as the chair of Ontario. Again, this doctor asked me to run. He was now the president of Hockey Canada. He said, you should run for Hockey Canada. So I ran for Hockey Canada. It was very, very stressful because you had to have every province vote for you. It was an election. So you literally campaigned on the phone, campaigned through email, and if you had enough money, you could hop on a plane or a bus and go to a province and attend one of their meetings and promote yourself. So I did that, and I got elected to the board. From there, I ran for the executive vice chair the following year, and then I ran for the chair of Hockey Canada, and I was elected. You were only allowed 2 terms, and I served the 2 terms. So in total, I spent 20 years at the Hockey Canada table.
Success all the way.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
Very, very nice, but lucky, but also you were the man for the job and the position. Yeah. So good for you. But congratulations.
Again, you're only as good as the people behind you.
Oh, that's a true leader.
I always had good support.
Yes.
And Mr. Bradley was my mentor. You know, I should tell you this little story. When I was appointed principal, he called me, and he always treated me like I was his son. And he said, I want to take you golfing today. So we went to Cedar Green. And when we got on the hole number 1, he said, sit on the bench, I want to talk to you. We never got to play. We sat on the bench and we talked the whole time. And he told me things that I should remember that would help you be successful in the role of a principal. Oh. And the one thing he taught me, and I still do it to this day, is you keep a book. The left side is things you should do by watching the people you work with. On the other side, things you shouldn't do by watching the people you work with. And you know it works, because you learn that was a dumb move that principal did. Yeah. Dumb move. He's alienating the staff and the students, and you can't win. You can't win.
Yeah. And it's good to note it, because when you're not in the action, it's easy to see what went wrong.
Yeah. So he's always been in my mind. I think of him quite regularly, because I think everybody needs a mentor, and everybody needs a friend like that.
Yes.
And he was actually my next door neighbor. So we became very close.
Everybody needs a mentor.
Yeah.
That's really, that is so true. And not to forget, to take advice from a mentor will just make you grow more.
Well, I like, it's funny, I'm thinking of this too. 2 days ago, one of my granddaughters, she's at Western. I have 3 granddaughters at Western, and the 4th one, I think she's going to go to Queen's. She wants to be a lawyer. Oh. But 2 of the 3 at Western want to be doctors. So one of them called me. She said, no, I joined a sorority. I said, well, I was in a fraternity for my 4 years at Clarkson. And so I start talking about things we did for hazing. In those days, hazing.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, I said, one of the things we had to do was make a paddle. And I had a little brother, and he'd make a paddle for me, and then I had made a paddle for my big brother when I was hazed. So she said, I have to do that too. So I said, you know, I have that paddle somewhere in my house. So I was going crazy saying, where the heck did I put that thing? So I went into my mechanical room downstairs where my water tank is, and there it was hanging on the wall.
Oh, wow.
I'll show you a picture of it
Yes.
after. Anyway, I took it down, I took a picture of it, and I sent it to her.
Oh.
She said, that's beautiful. So I phoned my little brother. He lives in Massachusetts. Now, this is 1965. He made that paddle and gave it to me. And it's just so beautiful. It has 7 coats of varnish on it. And so I called him. His name was Jason. I said, Jace, you won't believe what I'm holding here. Oh, what's that? I said, the damn paddle that you made for me. He started to laugh. You still have that? He said.
Do you want it?
Yeah, no, I want giving it to anybody.
No, you're keeping it.
Yeah.
Well, that is so good. And, you know, all the good you did for Northern Ontario. Thank you for that.
Oh, it was fun.
Yes. And I know that we talk about retirement, but for people that will be watching your interview, retirement is just a word. And you're involved. You're very involved in the community. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, you know, when I retired, so-called retired from Hockey Canada, and I had retired from the school board prior to that, I was sitting in this room and saying to myself, what are you doing? You're falling asleep at your laptop. You're watching TV and you don't even see the movie or the story because you're falling asleep. You get up and go to bed at 12:30, 1:30, and you're up tossing and turning at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you get up and dress, but you have nowhere to go. So I said, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to become useless. So I was invited to the inner city home. They were having a seminar on the weekend looking at restructuring their board. And I had led Hockey Canada through a restructuring of their board, where they had 2 representatives from every province in the country, plus other committee members, and we cut it down to 8 people. So that I saw the inner city home was full of people sitting on a board that did nothing. They were wonderful people, but they came to a meeting once a month, went home, and they didn't see each other for another month. I always say they serve a meal. I call them knife and forkers. They went to eat, and they got a nice supper, and you won't see them till the next supper. I said, this might be the last supper. You never know. Anyway, they said, would you consider coming on the board? So a friend of mine was on the board, and I said, well, I have nothing to do. I think I will. So I joined the board. And at Christmas, they asked me, would you take over the presidency? I said, only if you allow me to streamline the board and get rid of some of the people. Not get rid of, that's a bad word. But get people that have contacts, that are movers and shakers, that can go into the community and say, how about doing this for the inner city home? How about doing that? We were 1 month away when I joined the board from bankruptcy. We couldn't even pay the executive director's salary. And there's only 1 paid employee in that organization and 62, 65 volunteers. So the board is all volunteers as well. So I did join, and we streamlined the board. We had a Crown attorney, we had a doctor, we had a lawyer, we had a mortician. I don't know if that's a good one to have, but we had a mortician, myself, an insurance person, and a financial investor. So we had a real span of people that could walk down Elm Street, walk down any street, and stop in a place and say, we're going to do this. Can you consider being involved in some way or another? Well, we got the place on its feet financially. St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church started the inner city home. They own the house to this day, but they've given it to us on the condition that we maintain it totally. We pay everything for it. We had to put a new roof on it. We fundraised for that. We had to put a new porch on it. We fundraised for that. We do not get 1 cent of funding from any government agency. We're considered to be an emergency food bank. We are only there to feed families suffering food insecurity and their children. And the people, we don't feed these people you see on the corners, I call them panhandlers. They're not the people we're looking after. We feed them, they have to have proof of a health card, and they have to have proof of a residence. And they must show that every time they come in for food. So I think we're doing the right thing. We had a real bad time with international students because they all come in for food.
Yeah.
And you know, if we're feeding international students who are obligated to be self-sufficient,
yes.
but they know the ropes and they say, if I can get free food, why shouldn't I go and get it?
Exactly.
So we did some phone calling, and the big food bank, the Lougheed Food Bank, it is not a food bank that gives out food. It gives out food to food banks to distribute to their people.
Yeah.
So we have 44 food banks in Sudbury, if you can believe that. 44. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of money that has to be raised. So we started to go here and there. We have agreements for help from Metro, Costco, Food Basics, and Giant Tiger, and Chris's Independent Grocers. So if you go in the store, you'll see bags at the front. People buy a bag, and then once a week those bags are all delivered to the food bank, and we get that. We do all kinds of special events. Mm-hmm. I just signed up to do 2 hockey games with the Wolves and 2 basketball games with the Five. We just finished a contract with the Wolves for 50-50. We had a 3-year contract with them, and now they're going to do it themselves. In 3 years, on 50-50, we had sellers from the Legion. We had all kinds of volunteers that came in and sold at the games. We cleared, in 3 years, $465,000 on 50-50. So that's a big hole that we have to fill now. National Grocers has given us a deal that for every $1 we can bring to them to buy food, they will give us $3 of food. Wow. So if you give us a can of soup, we get a can of soup. But if you give us $1, we can buy $1 worth of food. So
wow.
I had a fellow yesterday that I went to high school with at St. Charles. He gave me $5,000, so that's like $15,000 of purchasing power.
Yes.
So I spoke at St. Patrick's Church on Saturday, and their Sunday Mass as well, and they're going to have food drives. The churches have been sensational. We even brought the United Church and the Catholic Church working together. And our Knights of Columbus, I'm in the, not Holy Redeemer, St. Andrew the Apostle Council. We're going to be cooking a breakfast for St. Stanislaus on the Hill United Church. So we're even doing our thing to promote unity in religion. But
it's so many outreach at the same time.
Yeah.
And what great success.
Yeah, it's been.
It's very impressive.
But I don't like that word success, because I'll tell you why. Everybody that knows what you're trying to do said, you're very successful. I said, we're not successful at all. We're still feeding tons of people.
Yeah.
We'll be successful when it's all over. And I'm not sure it's ever going to be all over.
Your work will never be done.
My dad used to say, every generation wants their next generation to be better than they were.
Yeah.
Like my dad was old country. He wanted me, when I graduated from university, it was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah.
But I look at my grandchildren and what they're going to be exposed to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that generation is going to be better than the one we're coming off of.
Speaking of generations, what advice would you give to the younger generation?
My main advice is, get the heck off of your computer, get the heck off of your phone, and try to be involved in the community and in your life. I was at the restaurant the other night having dinner with some friends, and there was a table across from us, 7 people, 5 were on their phone while they were eating.
Yeah.
And
they were together.
Yeah, and when even if I go to my daughter's for dinner, my two granddaughters are on their bloody phone. You know, I think they've got to realize that life is not just computer. It's a shame. I went to buy a birthday card, and I gave the girl $5 for the card. Hallmark, which is a cheap card there. She owed me 15 cents. She's got her phone, and she's going like that. I said, you mean you can't count? You don't have to, sir. She said, it's right here. She's had her calculator on the phone, and she was ready to give me my 15. Well, when I went to school, I could recite all those damn tables that they were coming out of my ears. But I think we're too much involved with technology. And life isn't always just technology, I don't think. Well, I hate to see, my doctor, I have a new doctor now because mine retired. And when I went to see him because he wanted to meet his new patients, I said, what's your schedule going to be like? Well, so he told me he doesn't want to work on Friday and he doesn't do hospital on-calls. I said, I'm 85 years old. If I go to the hospital, you're telling me you can't come and see me because you don't do on-calls. But somebody will see you, he said. I said, I don't want somebody.
I want you.
I want my doctor. Well, he says, that's the way it is. So he's just a first-year doctor practicing his first year. So I said sarcastically, my dad always told me that you're supposed to retire at 65, not at 35. So he didn't answer me.
Well, he probably thought you were joking.
Well, I wasn't, though.
But you weren't.
So well, I feel like even at the inner city home, we have a lot of young kids that come to do their 50 hours of community service. They'll come there and work. So when you see those kids, there's a ray of hope.
Yeah.
But some that come that are assigned by the courts to come and help us, you say, this is a bad world, a sad world. You know, they don't want to be there. They even want you to sign the paper that they put in 10 hours and they were only there half an hour, you know.
Yeah.
So we've got to change our thoughts and the way we live. There's so much fun in the world, but they're not having any fun. And it's dangerous and it's scary.
Yeah. And they're forgetting what life is all about.
Yeah.
Or maybe they never got it.
Yeah. And they don't like school. God, I loved school. You know, being involved, playing sports, getting into clubs, doing this, going to a football game, going to a dance on Friday night. That was all part of an education.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you're right. And, well, the advice for the younger generation, we'll just sit back and watch what happens.
Yeah.
We can't do more than that.
No, that's true.
Because society has changed.
Yeah. And they don't want to listen to old guys like me.
Well, maybe they do. Throughout your journey, what would you do different?
Nothing.
Good. Well, that is, so you would do everything the same, and I've heard that before from others that I've interviewed. And what do you cherish the most?
I think the day I met my wife.
Oh.
I came home, I was playing hockey, and we had a weekend off, and a very good friend of mine was being married. So I flew home to go to his wedding. His wife-to-be had a cousin who was the girl I ended up marrying, coming to the wedding, but she was going to be alone, so she called me and said, would you consider a blind date for the wedding? So I did, and we ended up from that. She moved to the American border so she could be closer to where I was, and she taught there for a year, and then we got engaged and got married. And the rest is, I think I've told you the rest.
And can I ask how many years?
52.
52. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Because that's another thing that we need. Hopefully we'll see it in the younger generation, but maybe not.
Well, she was a teacher as well. She taught at Nickel District here. She taught girls phys ed and English, and then she became the resource teacher. And she loved students. She coached lots of teams and did that kind of stuff.
That's wonderful. So you did have, a lot in common.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And this conversation was very rich. I'm going to ask one last thing. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I just would like to see the world be more positive. When, I watch U.S. politics a lot because I lived in the States for 4 years, and I don't like what I see and hear. And it's rather scary when you see how they campaign and how ruthless they are towards each other, and it's becoming that way in Canada now.
You're right.
I listen to our local politicians. I listen to our provincial and our international and national people. It's slam dunk your opposition. Don't say anything good. I'd like to see, praise yourself for what you can do for the people. You don't have to dump all over the guy or girl you're running against. That's not what it's about. I'm not going to vote for you if that's your campaign. I want somebody there that's out for the good of our nation. When I go to vote, I vote for the best person that I think is running, not for a party. When I was in the U.S., it was very obvious that if you were a liberal, or a Republican, and your grandfather and your was a Republican, you could run that table. You were a Republican.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's wrong.
So, thank you again for meeting with us. We really appreciate
Oh, it's
your time.
It's been a pleasure. You gave me lots of time to reminisce.
All good.